Part 18. The Prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 171. Shen Chuwei desperately winked at Chengzi. Chengzi, are you too busy to notice? Chengzi didn't notice the look from her master, but said more seriously, my lady, I didn't remember it wrong, the salt is just right. She learned that His Highness was coming for dinner, so she specially prepared leeks, because Shen Chu had mentioned the wonderful uses of leeks before. Shen Chuwei was almost dying of anxiety. Chengzi, I just heard you say that you put too much salt. The last syllable was dragged out very long. Chengzi, please cooperate. My lady, you must have remembered it wrong, this is definitely not what I said. Chengzi also desperately winked, my lady, the leeks cannot be removed, it will be good for His Highness to eat them. Just when the two of them winked at each other, hoping that the other party would understand the meaning of their eyes, Xiao Jinyan put his chopsticks into the plate, picked up some leeks and put them into his mouth, chewing slowly. After eating, he looked up at Shen Chuwei, I tasted some, the taste is just right, not salty. Shen Chuwei turned her head to look at Xiao Jinyan, and couldn't help but sigh, you are really fast, you taste the dishes yourself. I saw him pick up some more leeks and put them into his mouth, taking a little each time, eating elegantly and dignifiedly, which she, a foodie, couldn't learn. Chengzi saw that the prince had eaten, and stepped aside to serve him with peace of mind. Really? I just heard Chengzi say that too much salt was added, maybe I misheard, she said guiltily. Xiao Jinyan didn't forget to comment while eating, today's leeks are more tender than the last time. Shen Chuwei. How could the first batch of leeks not be tender? How could Chengzi have the heart to eat such tender leeks? She picked up a piece of braised pork ribs with chopsticks and put it into the bowl in front of Xiao Jinyan, Your Highness, please eat more pork ribs. Yes, Xiao Jinyan picked up the pork ribs in front of him and put them into his mouth, took a bite, and chewed slowly. Shen Chuwei reached into the plate with chopsticks again and picked up several pieces of pork ribs. She wanted to pick more, but seeing that the bowl was full, if she picked more, it would fall out, so she had to put away her chopsticks. It's not too late to pick up more after he finishes eating. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at the pork ribs piled up like a small mountain in the bowl, then looked up at Shen Chuwei with doubts in his eyes. Braised pork ribs are her favorite, why can't she bear to give him the pork ribs today? And pick so many? Shen Chuwei picked up the pork ribs and put them into her mouth and took a bite, and found that Xiao Jinyan was staring at her. She swallowed the meat in her mouth and spoke, because Chengzi said it was rude to talk with rice in your mouth. Your Highness, don't just stare at me. Eat. Spare ribs taste much better than leeks. Eat more spare ribs and less leeks, and you'll sleep better at night. Xiao Jinyan said, do you think I'm you? Then he put some spare ribs in the bowl into her bowl, you'd better eat more. You're too thin. Shen Chuwei put the spare ribs back and said, Your Highness, didn't you say I was fat before? I'm losing weight now. Xiao Jinyan paused and refused to admit it, when did I ever say that? Yes, Your Highness didn't say that. I want to lose weight myself, Shen Chuwei said with concern, Your Highness has lost weight because of working hard these days. It's better to eat more spare ribs. Xiao Jinyan has indeed been working hard these days. I don't know if he has lost weight. He came to Hehuan Palace today to relax. Okay, I'll eat it. He picked up the spare ribs and put them into his mouth, chewing slowly. Shen Chuwei lowered her head and started eating after hearing this. Braised spare ribs were her favorite. After a while, she had eaten all the spare ribs on the plate. When she reached for her chopsticks again, she found that the plate was empty. She had to withdraw her hand and glanced at the spare ribs in the bowl in front of Xiao Jinyan. There were still a lot. Suddenly, she regretted giving him so many pieces. She didn't eat enough. Xiao Jinyan didn't want to eat after eating 3 pieces. He looked at the leeks and put some in his mouth to chew. It was not as greasy as spare ribs and the taste was just right, so he ate more. Changzi, who was standing by, saw it and felt a little excited. If His Highness ate more, the chance of the young lady getting pregnant would be even greater. Shen Shuwei saw Xiao Jinyan eating a few bites in a row and began to worry. If he continued to eat like this, Xiao Jinyan would definitely be very excited tonight. It would be better if he didn't stay overnight. If he stayed overnight, she would suffer. Shen Shuwei picked a big bowl, filled it with fish soup and handed it over attentively. "Your Highness, the fish soup is delicious, please try it." Xiao Jinyan looked up at the bowl in front of him, which was twice as big as the bowl he used for eating. He looked up at Shen Shuwei with a questioning look in his eyes. "The bowl is too big." Changzi wanted to scratch the wall in embarrassment. Why would she use such a big bowl? It would affect her manners when eating. Okay. Shen Shuwei searched for a long time before finding a very far-fetched reason. It's not easy to spill soup in a big bowl. Xiao Jinyan paused, took the soup bowl from her hand and placed it in front of him, and scooped it with a white porcelain spoon. Shen Shuwei knew that Xiao Jinyan didn't have a big appetite, and he would probably be full after drinking the fish soup, and then he wouldn't be able to eat leeks. She continued to eat with peace of mind, and her eyes looked at the ribs in the bowl in front of Xiao Jinyan from time to time. It would be a pity if he couldn't finish it. Until the end of dinner, Shen Shuwei didn't eat the ribs that Xiao Jinyan ignored. She watched the ribs taken away by Changzi with her own eyes, feeling heartbroken. I shouldn't have given him so many earlier. What a waste. Xiao Jinyan was drinking the freshly brewed tea. Seeing Shen Shuwei frowning, he paused while drinking the tea and said with some worry, "What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Shen Shuwei shook her head, "I'm not feeling uncomfortable." Xiao Jinyan said, "You don't need to show off in front of me. If you feel uncomfortable, tell me immediately." I know. Shen Shuwei looked at Xiao Jinyan, who was still drinking tea, held the handkerchief tightly, and asked hesitantly, "Your Highness has been busy with official duties recently. Do you have to work overtime at night? Although overtime is tiring, you should still work overtime." Xiao Jinyan drank tea lightly. "It's really busy these days." Shen Shuwei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It's better to be busy. Being busy can stabilize the position of the prince. Xiao Jinyan ordered lightly, "Let someone prepare hot water. I want to take a bath." Shen Shuwei looked at Xiao Jinyan in disbelief. "Isn't your Highness busy? Shouldn't he work overtime when he is busy?" Xiao Jinyan raised his eyebrows and looked at Shen Shuwei. "Isn't it possible for me to rest if I am busy? I will ask someone to prepare hot water right away." Shen Shuwei stood up with a guilty conscience and asked Changzi to prepare hot water. After hearing this, Changzi took a cheerful step and happily asked someone to prepare hot water. I envy Changzi so much. She doesn't have to worry about sleeping with me. After the hot water was ready, Xiao Jinyan stood up, spread his arms, and looked like he was going to take off his clothes for me. Shen Shuwei took small steps forward and took off the clothes of this prince. Maybe she had some resentment in her heart, so her hands were a little rough. "My dears, good evening. There are more updates. I'm begging for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets by acting cute. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 172. If Xiao Jinyan was lying on the bed with his hands tied, Shen Shuwei's posture of taking off clothes would probably be like a female bandit who kidnapped a handsome husband and took him into the bridal chamber. A forced melon is so sweet. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and watched Shen Shuwei taking off her clothes anxiously, as if he was afraid of being too late. After taking off the outer robe and the inner clothes, he took off his movements without any dissatisfaction. He tore off the belt with one hand, grabbed the lapels with both hands and pulled them to both sides, revealing his fair and firm chest. Xiao Jinyan's eyes darkened. Shen Shuwei was stunned for a moment. She didn't want to take off her inner clothes. On the fair chest, the scar was the most conspicuous and a little shocking. Although I haven't seen Xiao Jinyan's figure, I can guess that he has a very good figure by seeing his strong chest muscles. Are you so impatient? Xiao Jinyan's cold and low voice came from above her head. Shen Shuwei looked up and said with a guilty conscience, "Isn't your highness in a hurry to take a bath?" Xiao Jinyan's eyes pointed, "I think you are a little anxious." "I'm not in a hurry." Shen Shuwei hugged the clothes and urged, "Your highness, go take a bath quickly, the water is getting cold." Xiao Jinyan stared at Shen Shuwei for a while, then turned and went behind the screen. Shen Shuwei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. After hanging up the clothes, she began to look for things. She took out the rice paper and spread it on the desk, and prepared the pen, ink, paper, and inkstone. Then she took out the pen that Xiao Jinyan gave her. It had been a few days since she gave it to her, but she had never used it. Today she could practice it. When Xiao Jinyan came out of the bath, he saw Shen Shuwei holding a pen and practicing calligraphy seriously, and it looked a bit like it. He walked over slowly, looking at the pen in her hand, and recognized it as the one he gave her at a glance. The pen body was made of top-grade black jade, and it was held by her fair and slender fingers, with clear black and white. He reminded, "The posture of holding the pen is wrong." "Is it?" Shen Shuwei stared at her hand for a while. That's right, she was imitating Xiao Jinyan's posture of holding the pen. Xiao Jinyan took 2 steps forward and came behind her, holding her slender waist with one hand and holding her hand with the other. When Xiao Jinyan came over, Shen Shuwei's body stiffened. He had just taken a bath, and his body was full of fresh air and his body temperature was abnormally warm. Her cheeks turned red involuntarily. "Correct it if you want to. Can a gentleman use his mouth instead of his hands?" Xiao Jinyan didn't notice that Shen Shuwei was distracted and complaining. He lowered his eyes and looked at the words on the paper, and frowned his narrow eyebrows. "You have been practicing calligraphy for so long, why haven't you made any progress?" Shen Shuwei said guiltily, "I am stupid and always fail to learn well." She hasn't held a pen for almost 2 months. It's already very good to be able to write like this. Xiao Jinyan said, "No problem, I will teach you." Shen Shuwei nodded. Xiao Jinyan held her hand, and taught her hand in hand as before. He was not so patient with his younger brother Xiao Jinyu. With Xiao Jinyan's hand as an aid, the words she wrote naturally looked much better and more pleasing to the eye. But Shen Shuwei had not forgotten the main purpose of practicing calligraphy tonight. She looked up at Xiao Jinyan. The two were very close at this time, so close that she could smell the cold fragrance on Xiao Jinyan's body, which was quite familiar. "Your Highness, I will practice by myself first." "You are so busy every day, go and rest first." Xiao Jinyan knew that practicing calligraphy depended on his patience, and practiced more. It would not be good to practice with his hands. "Okay, you practice for a while." He let go of Shen Shuwei's hand, stood up and walked to the bed, picked up a book by the way, and planned to sit on the bed and read for a while. Shen Shuwei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. When Xiao Jinyan fell asleep, she would not have to serve him. She picked up the pen and continued to practice calligraphy. "I felt bored practicing, so I just started drawing." After an incense stick of time, Xiao Jinyan looked up at the desk and found Shen Shuwei still practicing with a pen. He reminded her, "Xiaoju, it's time to rest." Shen Shuwei yawned secretly and turned to look at Xiao Jinyan on the bed. "Your Highness, I want to practice for a while. If you are sleepy, you can rest first." Xiao Jinyan was not sleepy at this time. Seeing that she was so diligent and studious, it was not good to disturb her interest, so he lowered his head and continued to read and wait for her. After another incense stick of time, Xiao Jinyan looked up at the desk. Shen Shuwei was still practicing calligraphy. Why did she suddenly become so diligent? Xiaoju, it's late, it's time to rest. Shen Shuwei was so sleepy at this time, yawning all the time. She thought Xiao Jinyan should be asleep at this time, but before she turned around, she heard Xiao Jinyan talking. She sighed, why is he still sleeping? She resisted the strong sleepiness and said, Your Highness, I want to practice for a while. You should go to sleep first. Hearing this, Xiao Jinyan put down the book in his hand, got up from the bed and put on his shoes and walked slowly over. Shen Shuwei didn't know that Xiao Jinyan came over by himself. She covered her mouth and yawned. Xiao Jinyan's clear voice came from above her head, Are you practicing calligraphy? Xiao Jinyan was curious about how Shen Shuwei's calligraphy was. There were no words on the rice paper, but it was clearly a painting. The voice was right beside her ear, scaring away all the sleepiness of Shen Shuwei. She raised her head suddenly and saw Xiao Jinyan's deep eyes. She hurriedly grabbed the painting on the desk and wanted to destroy it. But Xiao Jinyan took the painting first and looked at the painting she drew carefully. There were about 6 or 7 people in the painting, one of whom was a man, and the rest were all women. The man hugged a woman in his arms and turned his head to kiss another one. One of the women was sitting on a chair, holding a watermelon in one hand and a cake in the other. Shen Shuwei tried to explain, Your Highness, I'm a little tired from practicing calligraphy, so I just wanted to paint for fun. She thought anxiously, Xiao Jinyan shouldn't recognize the people in the painting, right? The painting actually shows Xiao Jinyan and his women, with beauties on both sides, which is the envy of many men. Oh, the one eating melons and cracking melon seeds is her. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at Shen Shuwei, pointing at the people in the painting and asked, What did you paint? Shen Shuwei racked her brains, and suddenly a light bulb flashed in her head. She explained, What I painted is that there is a play on the stage, and I am sitting in the audience eating melons and watching the play, watching and eating with relish. Xiao Jinyan's voice was full of doubt, Really? Shen Shuwei nodded guiltily, Of course, do you think the one man and 6 women above look like those in the play? Xiao Jinyan glanced at the people in the painting and did not comment. It's late at night, go take a bath and rest. I'm slow to take a bath, Your Highness can go to bed if you can't wait, Shen Shuwei said and ran to the closet, took out her clothes and ran behind the screen. When she got behind the screen, she patted her chest, I was scared to death, how come there was no sound when walking? Shen Shuwei began to take off her clothes and take a bath. Xiao Jinyan sat at the head of the bed and waited. Shen Shuwei took twice as long as before, and if the water was not getting cold, she would have continued to dawdle. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 173. She slowly stood up from the tub and wiped the water droplets from her body with a dry towel. Xiao Jinyan should be sleeping now, right? She dressed slowly to buy time. No matter how much I procrastinated, the 3 pieces of clothing were put on in no time. After getting dressed, she walked out from behind the screen quietly. She looked towards the bed and found Xiao Jinyan sitting on the bedside with a book in his hand. He looked like he was waiting for her. It's so late, why isn't he sleeping? When Shen Shuwei walked over, Xiao Jinyan heard footsteps. He put down the book in his hand and raised his head. She had just finished bathing, her cheeks were flushed, her hair was a little wet, and her long black hair was scattered on her shoulders. What took so long? I haven't taken a bath for a long time, so I took an extra bath tonight. Why aren't you sleeping, Your Highness? Shen Shuwei had to come over even if he didn't want to come over. Xiao Jinyan put the book on the cabinet aside, raised his eyes to look at Shen Shuwei, and said calmly, I'm not sleepy. Shen Shu smiled, You're not sleepy, So you're waiting for me so you can go to bed, right? She didn't understand that there were so many women around Xiao Jinyan, all kinds of beauties, more talented and more charming than her. Why did she have to sleep with him? Can his body cope with the food? It is not easy to make up for the damage caused by kidney damage. Shen Shuwei had to go to bed even if he didn't want to, so he took off his shoes and crawled in, as usual. When she got inside, she lifted the quilt and got in, leaning against the wall, keeping a safe distance from Xiao Jinyan. Xiao Jinyan originally thought that because of what happened the night before, the two of them would get closer. Seeing Shen Shuwei's behavior, he frowned. Was he really that scary? Didn't I say that you are still so afraid of me? Your Highness is a man among men, and I dare not get the slightest bit of it from you. Of course Shen Shuwei didn't dare to say that. His Royal Highness is the Crown Prince. Isn't it normal for my concubines to be afraid of His Highness? It's hard for Xiao Jinyan to disagree with Shen Shuwei's words. He is the prince and the future heir apparent. No matter who he is, he should be in awe of him. He took a deep breath and realized that he had been too emotional recently because Shen Shuwei had been angry for so long with just one word. It was because of what happened the night before that his anger dissipated. This is not right. He is the emperor and cannot let anyone influence his emotions. He originally wanted Shen Shuwei to sleep with him tonight. Shen Shuwei didn't sleep just waiting, and he had to get up early to deal with official duties tomorrow, so he had no idea at all. Go to sleep. Shen Shuwei nodded vigorously, yeah. Xiao Jinyan said he should rest, so he closed his body and lay down straight. Shen Chu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Living in Hehuan Hall was not a long-term solution. Moving back to Xiun Pavilion was the most important thing. It's a pity that I didn't get a chance to speak tonight. Shen Shuwei was thinking about how to move back to Xiun Pavilion, and fell asleep while thinking about it. Asterisk. When Shen Shuwei woke up, Xiao Jinyan was no longer around. Chengzi happily came in to help Shen Shuwei dress and wash up. My young master, let's try to win a man with one fell swoop this time, and be proud of ourselves. Shen Shuwei heard the salted fish and became a little greedy. I want to eat salted fish. Years ago, Shen Shuwei asked Chengzi to go to the imperial kitchen to get some fish to marinate, which was almost dry these days. My slave is making salted fish for lunch today. During lunch, Shen Shuwei ate the salted fish he wanted to eat, and was extremely satisfied. At this time, Lu 11 led the people in with a smile. Ever since Xiao Jinyan and Shen Shuwei reconciled, Lu 11 felt that the air around him was fresh. Shen Liangdi, His Highness gave this to you for viewing in your spare time. As soon as Lu 11 finished speaking, the three young eunuchs behind him took 2 steps forward and raised the ornaments in their hands. Shen Chu looked over curiously and saw that the little eunuch was holding a transparent glass cup. There were countless small stones at the bottom of the glass cup. It was mostly filled with water, and a dozen small fish were swimming happily in it. She was very happy in her heart. She was worried that there would be no fry, but Xiao Jinyan actually delivered them. Your Highness is thoughtful and I like it very much. Shen Shuwei looked closely at the fish inside. There were several varieties, including grass carp and blackfish. Shen Liangdi is fine if she likes it. The Xie family will go back and resume their lives now. Lu 11 smiled and exited. Shen Shuwei couldn't wait to order, Chengzi, call the little rabbit and the others in, and carry the fish to Xiun Pavilion. The little rabbit and the others were each holding a glass lamp. A large group of people went to Xiun Pavilion. Walking into Xiun Pavilion, Shen Shuwei felt like going home. Gai Xiang was a little surprised when she saw Shen Shuwei coming back. His Highness drove the young master back. Chen 11 said coquettishly, can you speak? Your Highness stayed at Hehuan Hall yesterday. How could you drive the young master back? Gai Xiang smiled and nodded quickly. Chengzi is right, how could His Highness be so willing to drive the young master back? The little rabbit lowered his eyes and glanced at the fish tank in his arms, and asked doubtfully, "Little master, where do you put these?" "Put a fish pond. There are so many fish fry. I believe that soon, I will have a little sister with a lot of fish." The fish pond was prepared early in the morning. She specially asked people to move aquatic plants and plant some lotus flowers. Shen Shuwei ordered them to put the fry in and feed them every day. She also secretly took water from the spiritual spring and put it into the fish pond to increase the survival rate and growth rate. Chun 11 came over curiously and asked, "My lord, what are you doing?" Shen Chu smiled mysteriously, "Feed the fish and drink water." Chengzi was stunned, feeding the fish with water. Shen Shuwei smiled, "You don't understand this." "Chengzi, I really don't understand that fish need to be fed with water." After feeding the fish with spiritual spring water, Shen Shuwei went to the vegetable garden and chicken coop like a mayor inspecting the countryside before returning to the Hehuan palace. Xiao Jinyan did not lie to her. He had been very busy these days, so busy that he could only see her once every few days and have a meal together. Shen Shuwei was so sleepy. Chengzi saw a puzzled look on her face. "My lady, didn't you just wake up from your nap? Why are you sleepy again?" After Chengzi finished speaking, she suddenly said in surprise, "My lady, you are not pregnant, are you?" Shen Shuwei was stunned for a moment, and immediately denied, "No, how could I be pregnant?" She and Xiao Jinyan were just sleeping. However, Shen Shuwei also felt strange. Why was she so sleepy? And she had nightmares one after another. Not only that, Shen Shuwei's sleepiness problem became more and more serious. Sometimes Chengzi called her for a long time before waking up. That day, Shen Shuwei was taking a nap. Chengzi saw that it was getting dark and Shen Shuwei didn't get up, so she went in to call her. "My lady, wake up." Chengzi called for a while and saw that Shen Shuwei didn't respond, so she said again, "My lady, get up and have dinner." Shen Shuwei still didn't respond, and Chengzi couldn't help but panic. Chengzi shook her hard, "My lady, please wake up, don't scare me." Xiao Jinyan walked in and saw this scene. He strode over and asked, "What happened to Shen Liangdi?" Chengzi was about to cry, "Your Highness, the young lady can't be awakened no matter how hard we call her." Xiao Jinyan ordered, "Go and ask for Imperial Physician Wen to come over." Good night, my dears. The latest update is about 3 chapters, 6,000 words, and my body can't handle 10,000 updates. Let the young master take it easy first, and I will update the dears in a few days. By the way, please give me monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 174. Chengzi took the order and ran out quickly. Xiao Jinyan sat down on the couch, watching her eyes closed and her brows furrowed. He reached his hand between her eyebrows and accidentally touched her forehead, which was wet and cold. He raised his voice and called, "Xiaju, wake up." Xiao Jinyan saw that it didn't work, so he had to pinch her philtrum. Shen Chu, who was originally in a coma, frowned slightly and slowly opened his eyes. He saw a hand pinching his philtrum. He looked at the owner of the hand and found that it was Xiao Jinyan, who had not seen him for 3 days. She grabbed the hand, her voice a little weak and hoarse, "Your Highness, it hurts, don't pinch it." Xiao Jinyan saw that she woke up and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. "What's wrong with you? You sleep so deeply." Shen Shuwei shook her head, "I don't know, I'm just very sleepy." Xiao Jinyan stared at her for a long time. "I see that you are listless, are you uncomfortable?" Shen Shuwei shook her head, "I don't feel uncomfortable, I'm just sleepy." Chengzi ran in, "Your Highness, Imperial Dr. Wen is here." She panted heavily after saying that. As soon as the voice fell, Imperial Dr. Wen walked in quickly with a medicine box. Xiao Jinyan ordered, "Imperial Dr. Wen, Take a look at her. I will take Shen Liangdi's pulse right now. Imperial Dr. Wen came to the bed with a medicine box and bent over. After putting down the medicine box, he first looked at Shen Shui's face and then took her pulse. Xiao Jinyan stood aside and asked, "She has been sleepy and listless recently. Do you know what the reason is?" When Imperial Physician gently placed Shen Shui's hand on the quilt, with a faint smile on his lips, and turned to Xiao Jinyan to congratulate, "Congratulations, Your Highness, Shen Liangdi is pregnant." As soon as the voice fell, the room was silent. Only Chengzi showed a look of surprise. The young lady was really pregnant. No wonder the young lady said that she was a magpie, chirping, and it was considered a good news. Pregnant pulse? Shen Shui seemed to be struck by lightning and did not react for a long time. I checked her a few days ago and there were no symptoms of poisoning or other diseases. It is even more impossible to be a pregnant pulse. She did not drink the water from the Zimu River in the Daughter Kingdom, and she did not have a baby without the union of men and women. She raised her head and looked at Xiao Jinyan. His face was gloomy and he could not tell whether he was happy or angry. Xiao Jinyan knew best whether she was pregnant or not, and he was probably confused too. Imperial Physician Wen lowered his head and found that the atmosphere was a little wrong. Xiao Jinyan should be excited about being a father for the first time, but why didn't he react with excitement at all? Instead, he felt the temperature of his body suddenly drop, which made his back feel cold. Xiao Jinyan's eyes were gloomy, and he looked at Shen Shui, slowly falling on her belly, which was covered with a quilt, and he couldn't see anything. She was pregnant? He took a deep breath and ordered, "Don't make this public, and those who disobey the order will be killed." Imperial Physician Wen has been in the palace for 3 years and has seen a lot of things. Now he also knows the seriousness of the matter. He lowered his head even more. "I obey your order." "I obey your order." Chengzi was confused and didn't know what happened. The young master was pregnant, and His Highness was unhappy? Why did he feel angry? Xiao Jinyan ordered coldly, "You all retreat." Chengzi and Imperial Physician Wen said in unison, "I obey your order." Then they walked out one after another. Only Shen Shui and Xiao Jinyan were left in the room. Shen Shui looked at Xiao Jinyan in confusion, not understanding his actions. In this way, both Imperial Dr. Wen and Chengzi would think she was pregnant. What a big misunderstanding. At the same time, she re-diagnosed her pulse, curious about how Imperial Dr. Wen diagnosed a pregnancy pulse. Xiao Jinyan pursed his lips tightly, staring at Shen Shui with his phoenix eyes. He didn't believe she would do such a thing during these days of getting along. But the pregnancy pulse told him that he had to believe it. Shen Shui frowned, because she also diagnosed a pregnancy pulse, and it was clearly not a pregnancy pulse 2 days ago, so how could it become a pregnancy pulse? Xiao Jinyan was silent for a long time, turned around and strode away without saying a word. When Shen Shui was wondering why she had a pregnancy pulse, she saw Xiao Jinyan leaving without looking back, and she shouted, "Your Highness." Xiao Jinyan's steps were very fast, and he disappeared at the door in a short while. After Xiao Jinyan left, Chengzi trotted in, her round little face full of confusion. "My lady, what's wrong? You're pregnant, why is His Highness unhappy? I feel like he's very angry." Shen Shui said helplessly, "I'm not pregnant." Chengzi was stunned for a moment. "My lady, did Dr. Wen misdiagnose you?" Shen Shui said, "It's not a misdiagnosis. Although the pulse is a happy pulse, it's an illusion." Chengzi sat limply on the pedal. "My lady, we're done." Shen Shui saw Chengzi was so scared, and knew the seriousness of the matter. "It's not that serious." Chengzi grabbed Shen Shui's hand, as if grasping the last hope. "My lady, are you mistaken? You've been sleeping with His Highness for so long, maybe you're really pregnant." Shen Shui sighed helplessly. "I said I'm not pregnant, so you don't even believe your own master?" "My lady, If it was really Dr. Wen's misdiagnosis, His Highness wouldn't be angry, unless His Highness thought that my lady was having an affair, but that doesn't make sense. Zhengzi was so anxious that she finally reconciled, and this happened again. Shen Shuwei now understood why Xiao Jinyan made such a misleading move, and left without looking back. Then he might really think that I'm having an affair, and the child is someone else's. Chun 11 said softly, "Don't you have no child?" But the pulse says it is there, and it was diagnosed by Dr. Wen. Except that it's not in the stomach, it's no different from the real thing. After Shen Shuwei finished speaking, he sighed, "We're done." Chengzi cried out with a cry, "Little master, this slave is afraid of death, huh?" Shen Chu said slightly, "It sounds like I'm not afraid of death." Chengzi panicked, "Then what should we do?" "If your highness thinks that the young master Hong Xing is cheating on you, then his highness is a cuckold, and even being beaten to death with a stick is an easy thing." Shen Chu said softly, "There is a kind of medicine that can cause false pulses after a woman takes it. However, I can taste this medicine as soon as I taste it, so it is not caused by the medicine." Chengzi thought for a while and guessed, "My lord, based on your familiarity with the drama of palace fighting, could Royal Dr. Wen be bribed?" He deliberately framed "my lord. You can't clean it up even if you jump into the Yellow River. Your Highness is angry, just beat him to death without any evidence, and the purpose will be achieved. Even if the truth comes out later, it will be too late." Shen Chu shook his head slightly, "Dr. Wen is a person Xiao Jinyan trusts, and he will not be bribed so easily. Have you forgotten that I got false smallpox last year? That is a serious crime of decapitation." Dr. Wen did not leak the news. Then what's going on? Who wants to harm the little master? Chun 11 thought about it for a long time, but she didn't expect that she suddenly grabbed Shen Shuwei's hand and said, "My lord, the most important thing now is to make your highness believe that my lord is not cheating on me. As long as your highness believes it, we won't die. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 175. Shen Shuwei sighed, "Your highness now thinks he's been cuckolded, and he's probably angry. No matter who this happens to, they'll be angry. Moreover, Xiao Jinyan is the prince, the future heir, and his concubine is cheating on him, so it's a blessing that he didn't beat her to death." Chengzi looked at Shen Shuwei with fear, "My lady, what should we do?" Shen Shuwei touched her stomach and said, "Is dinner ready? Let's eat first." "Chengzi, my lady, you're in big trouble, and you're still thinking about eating." Shen Shuwei said confidently, "I'll have the strength to think of a solution only after I'm full, right?" Okay. Chengzi went to prepare dinner. After Shen Shuwei had eaten and drunk enough, she began to feel sleepy again. After Chengzi had packed up, she couldn't wait to ask, "My lady, have you figured out a solution?" Shen Shuwei yawned and said, "Not yet." Chengzi held her chin with both hands and said, "Then I'll help you figure it out." After an incense stick of time had passed. "My lady, have you figured out a solution? Let's go now." Chengzi turned her head to look at Shen Shuwei and found that she had her eyes closed and fell asleep. She sighed. "Who are you still thinking about at this time?" Wen, the imperial physician, who had just returned to the imperial hospital, was summoned by Xiao Jinyan before he could even sit down. At this time, in the study, the sound of the candle burning could be heard quietly. Imperial physician Wen stepped forward and bowed, "Your Highness, you asked me to come here. What do you want me to do?" Xiao Jinyan raised his eyes to look at Imperial physician Wen and asked in a deep voice, "Did you make a mistake in Shen Liangdi's pulse?" Imperial physician Wen lowered his head even lower, and said firmly, "Your Highness, I can guarantee with my life that I have made no mistake. Shen Liangdi is indeed pregnant, and it has been more than a month. More than a month, that is, the days when he left the palace." Xiao Jinyan clenched the pen in his hand, and the pen broke under the weight. Imperial Physician Wen was startled, and he lowered his head and dared not say a word. Xiao Jinyan was silent for a while, and then continued to ask, "Why is she so sleepy these days?" When Imperial Physician said, "Your Highness, pregnant women are prone to sleepiness." Xiao Jinyan asked again, "Are there any other reasons?" When Imperial Physician, "According to the pulse, there is no other reason." Xiao Jinyan paused, and coldly spat out 4 words, "Go away." Then he instructed, "Don't tell anyone." "Yes." After when Imperial Physician left, Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at the painting on the desk, which was the one Shen Chuwei painted that night. The girl on the chair, holding a watermelon in her left hand and melon seeds in her right hand, enjoyed eating and was not interested in power. How could she do such a thing? At this time, Lu 11 walked in and reported, "Your Highness, Chengzi from Ziyun Pavilion wants to see you." Xiao Jinyan, "Let her in." After Lu 11 left, Chengzi walked in with her head down, knelt on the ground with a plop, and cried, "Your Highness, the young lady has fallen asleep again. I want to wake her up, but I can't wake her up." Xiao Jinyan ordered, "Lu 11, call back Imperial Dr. Wen." The group came to Ziyun Pavilion again. As Chengzi said, Shen Chuwei fell into a coma again. Xiao Jinyan ordered, "Imperial Dr. Wen, check her out quickly." "I obey your command." Imperial Dr. Wen stepped forward to check her pulse again, and she frowned. Xiao Jinyan asked, "How is she?" Imperial Dr. Wen shook his head, "Your Highness, there is no other discomfort." Xiao Jinyan asked, "Then why doesn't she wake up?" Chengzi wiped away tears anxiously, "Imperial Dr. Wen, my young lady has been sleepy for a while, and it has become more serious in the past 2 days. It is difficult to wake her up. This time it is more serious than before, and she can't wake her up." Imperial Dr. Wen said, "From the pulse, I can see that there are indeed no other symptoms." Xiao Jinyan asked, "Is there any way to wake her up?" "I will try." Imperial Dr. Wen took out the silver needle and tried a few degrees. Shen Chuwei slowly opened her eyes, looked at the people in the room, and was stunned for a moment. Chengzi shouted in surprise, "My lady, you are finally awake, I scared you to death." Xiao Jinyan ordered coldly, "You all leave." "Yes." Chengzi and Imperial Dr. Wen left one after another. Shen Chuwei had just woken up, but she was still very sleepy. Xiao Jinyan was here, and she forced herself not to close her eyes. Xiao Jinyan stared at Shen Chuwei for a while, and said word by word, "I want an explanation. Tell the truth. Even if you make a mistake, I will give you a lighter sentence for you because you risked your life to save me." Shen Chuwei looked at Xiao Jinyan with clear and innocent eyes, and said with some dissatisfaction, "Your Highness, don't you know whether I am pregnant or not?" Xiao Jinyan paused. "Imperial Dr. Wen's medical skills are the best in the Imperial Hospital. I asked him and he did not make a wrong diagnosis. The implication is, where does this pregnancy pulse come from?" Shen Chuwei said, "I did not question the medical skills of Dr. Wen. Although Dr. Wen diagnosed a pregnancy pulse, it does not mean that I am pregnant, right? A pregnancy pulse can also be a false pregnancy pulse. Besides, I can diagnose a pulse myself. A pregnancy pulse is the simplest, and I can diagnose it myself. False pregnancy pulse?" Xiao Jinyan asked anxiously, awakening the dreamer with a word, "Do you mean that someone deliberately framed you?" Shen Chuwei said, "There is a kind of medicine that can make people have a false pregnancy pulse, but I did not take that medicine. It should be another method." Xiao Jinyan asked, "What method?" Shen Chuwei shook her head, "I don't know." After saying that, she yawned, and her eyelids seemed to weigh 1,000 gold, making her want to close her eyes and sleep. Xiao Jinyan sat down on the bed, looking at her listless spirit, and those who didn't know would think she was seriously ill. What happened to you just now? I'm so sleepy. This kind of sleepiness is very abnormal. Shen Shuwei only knew that she was not poisoned or sick, and she really didn't know why she was so sleepy. Of course it's not normal, who would sleep so soundly? After Xiao Jinyan finished speaking, he called in Imperial Dr. Wen. Take a look at her again, she is not pregnant, she is very sleepy. Imperial Dr. Wen re-diagnosed Shen Shuwei's pulse, and the diagnosis was still, there are no other symptoms, and I don't know why the sleepiness comes. Imperial Dr. Wen still diagnosed that it was a pregnancy pulse, but judging from the degree of sleepiness just now, it didn't seem like a symptom of pregnancy. Xiao Jinyan was worried and asked Imperial Dr. Wen to check again and again, but there were still no other symptoms. At this time, Shen Shuwei fell into a coma again, and could not be awakened even if he was called. Imperial Dr. Wen also felt strange, but he could do nothing. Lu 11 stepped forward to remind, Your Highness, could it be witchcraft? Witchcraft is a taboo in the palace. If it is found out, you will lose your head. Even so, there are still people in the palace who secretly use witchcraft to harm people. Good evening, my dears. There are more updates. 4 chapters and 8,000 words have been updated today. Begging for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets by acting cute. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 176. The magic of witchcraft cannot be seen by the imperial doctor. Its symptoms will only appear on those who have been bewitched. Shen Shuwei was severely lethargic and had a false pregnancy. However, he could not diagnose the cause and could only think of witchcraft. Xiao Jinyan pondered for a moment and then ordered, Ask Lu Zayan to come over. Here Lu 11 quickly went to find Mr. Lu. Xiao Jinyan looked at Shen Shuwei who was sleeping again and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He said, How could someone like Shen Shuwei do such a thing? Lu Zayan came very quickly, almost jogging as Lu 11 urged him all the way. Lu Zayan gasped lightly and asked, Your Highness, what's the matter with calling Wei Chen over? Xiao Jinyan did not mince words, I heard that you have researched the art of witchcraft and poison. Is it true? Lu Zayan was startled, Your Highness, I don't dare to study this, or I will lose my head. Xiao Jinyan ignored Lu Zayan's words and pulled him to the bedside. He pointed at Shen Shuwei, who was already sleeping, and said, Come and see Shen Liangdi. She has become very sleepy recently and cannot be woken up even if she screams. Do you know if she has been hit by a witch, the art of Gu? Lu Zayan glanced at Shen Shuwei on the bed. He hadn't seen her for a few days and found that she seemed to have become much more beautiful again. He asked Xiao Jinyan, Your Highness, has the imperial doctor seen it? Xiao Jinyan, I've looked at it, but I can't get a diagnosis. Let's take a look. Wei Chan. Lu Zayan lowered his eyes and looked at Shen Shuwei's face. He counted with his fingers, Shen Liangdi has been in trouble recently and met a villain. Xiao Jinyan asked, Is there a solution? Lu Zayan comforted him and said, Your Highness, don't worry. Shen Liangdi is a wealthy and noble person and will turn danger into safety. Xiao Jinyan was not reassured by Lu Zayan's words, Then you mean that she is like this because someone is cursing her behind her back? We can't rule out this possibility. After Lu Zayan finished speaking, he stared at Shen Shuwei's face for a while, then curiously picked up her hand, intending to read her palm. Xiao Jinyan saw Lu Zayan pick up Shen Shuwei's hand, take a step forward with a calm face, hold Shen Shuwei's hand and put it into the quilt. Men and women can't touch each other. Lu Zayan was startled, he just wanted to see his palm. What he saw just now was correct, Shen Shuwei had the fate of being the king of phoenixes. So, Shen Shuwei is Xiao Jinyan's destined person? Lu Zayan seemed to have discovered some secret. Your Highness, if Shen Liangdi is your destined person, what do you think? Xiao Jinyan glanced at Lu Zhayan suspiciously. What do you want to say? Lu Zhayan took a quick look just now and was not sure. Wei Chen is just guessing. Xiao Jinyan said coldly, you have this time to gossip, why not find out the villain behind it? If I want to see it, who dares to attack her? Wei Minister, I obey. After Lu Zhayan accepted the order, he withdrew. This was the first time he saw Xiao Jinyan being so interested in a woman. It seemed that it was only a matter of time before he became a father. Xiao Jinyan and Shen Chuwei were the only ones left in the room. He lowered his eyes and looked at the sleeping person on the bed. Whoever he was destined for would be his destined person. It also shows that he has excellent vision, and Shen Chuwei has never let him down. When Shen Chuwei woke up again, it was lunchtime the next day. She was so hungry that the first thing she said was, Chengzi, your little master is starving to death. Chengzi opened the door curtain like a gust of wind. Little master, you can't say the word death, it's unlucky. Then he lifted up the quilt and said, this slave will wait for the young master to wash up. Shen Chuwei was in low spirits, and he looked like a very weak patient as he was hungry. After breakfast, Shen Chuwei's physical and mental strength had recovered somewhat, but he was still feeling groggy. At this time, news suddenly spread in the East Palace that Shen Liangdi was pregnant for more than a month. The news soon reached the Queen's ears. Are you serious? Shen Liangdi is pregnant. The Queen was extremely happy. I said that living so close must be beneficial. I am going to be a grandmother. Qingying was so anxious that she reminded her in a low voice, Empress, Shen Liangdi is more than 1 month pregnant. His Royal Highness has not returned to the palace at that time. His Royal Highness has only returned to the palace for 27 days. The Queen was stunned when she heard this. You mean, the child in Shen Liangdi's belly is not the prince's? Qingying nodded, probably. How is this possible? The smile on the Queen's lips disappeared and was replaced by disappointment. Is Shen Liangdi blind? She actually cuckolded the prince. Qingying said, my lady, news suddenly came from the East Palace. I don't know whether it is true or not. The Queen couldn't sit still. She stood up quickly, with a scowl on her face. Go to the Hehuan Hall and bring the imperial doctor with you. I want to see if it is a rumor or the truth. The Queen and a group of people were walking on the road to the Hehuan Hall in the East Palace. Suddenly a woman ran out halfway. This woman was Zhao Shun Fengyuyu, who was severely punished by the prince for speaking arrogantly and being disrespectful to Shen Chuwei. I send my regards to the Queen. May the Queen be blessed with peace and happiness. The Queen said angrily, who are you? Feng Zhaoshun lowered his head and replied respectfully, the Queen, my concubine is Feng Zhaoshun. I have something important to report to the Queen. The Queen's memory was not very good, and she couldn't remember who Feng Zhaoshun was even after thinking for a long time. Qingying stepped forward and reminded, Mother, Feng Zhaoshun is the legitimate daughter of Magistrate Feng. She was originally a good lady but was demoted to Zhaoshun. The Queen then remembered and glanced at Feng Yuyu, say. Feng Zhaoshun said, Queen, I accidentally saw Shen Liangdi hanging out with the guards a month ago. The Queen's blood pressure rose sharply when she heard this. Who can resist being angry when the Princess Liangdi hangs out with the guards? Then why did you say it now? Queen, Shen Liangdi is protected by His Highness, and I have no evidence, so I dare not assert it. I saw it twice, and I saw that His Highness loved Shen Liangdi so much, and I couldn't bear to let her be deceived, so I dared to tell her, Feng Zhaoshun said. It would be better if the Queen didn't listen, but she got even angrier when she heard it. Such a serious matter, why didn't you tell the prince early? Why did you keep it secret until now? Queen, His Highness doesn't believe what I said, and if I say too much, it will only hurt my ears, so I came to the Queen today to report this matter, Feng Zhaoshun said anxiously. The Queen said, that's perfect. I'm going to the Hehuan Palace to take a look. You should come with me to be a witness. Feng Zhaoshan said, I obey your command. The group went to the Hehuan Palace in a mighty manner. Chengzi heard some bad rumors when she went out today. On the way back, she saw the queen coming from a distance, and she hurriedly ran to the palace. When she entered the Hehuan Palace, she didn't even have time to breathe. My lady, it's bad, the queen is here. Shen Shuwei almost fell asleep, because Chengzi woke up again after a shout, she's here, why are you making such a fuss? The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 177. My lord, there are rumors in the East Palace that you are more than 1 month pregnant. Does this obviously mean that you cuckolded His Highness? The queen must have come here because of this incident, Chengzi gasped after speaking. By the way, my lord, the queen has also brought the imperial doctor here. It seems that she wants to find out the truth this time. The imperial doctor will know the happy pulse as soon as he checks the pulse, so there will be no excuses. Chengzi thought for a while and said, I'd better ask Little Rabbit to inform His Highness to come to the rescue. If it's too late, it will be too late. Chengzi burst into laughter, and after finishing speaking, he was about to rush out, but was stopped by Shen Shuwei. His Highness is so busy with official duties every day, so it's better not to ask him to come. But the queen is here, and when the imperial doctor checks her pulse, we can't explain it clearly even if we have 100 mouths. Chengzi was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, spinning around. Shen Chu yawned slightly, don't worry, I'm here. My lord, please don't be so pushy. Chengzi looked at Shen Shuwei with some worry. My lord has been in a very bad state these past 2 days. Outside the door, Eunuch Ren's high-pitched voice came, the queen has arrived. No matter how anxious Chengzi was, it was useless and she could only stand up to greet the queen. Shen Shuwei used his mind to take out a silver needle from the space. There are medicines that can make people have false pregnancy pulses, and there are also ways to cover up the happy pulse. Her silver needle has not been used for a long time, and she is not unfamiliar with using it. The Queen's Majesty has arrived. There is a huge group of people, including 6 maids alone. With Chun 11's support, Shen Shuwei got out of bed and saluted to greet him. I send my regards to the Queen. May the Queen be blessed with peace and happiness. The Queen walked to the couch and sat down. Get up. Thank you, Queen. Shen Shuwei stood up with Chun 11's help. The Queen also saw Shen Shuwei's face at this moment. It was indeed not very good. This is what a pregnant woman looks like in the early stages of pregnancy, so she believed it a little more. Shen Liangdi doesn't look well. Is she sick? Back to the Queen, my concubine has indeed been feeling unwell recently and is very lethargic, Shen Shuwei replied honestly. Feng Yuyi raised the corners of her lips when she heard this and looked at Shen Shuwei with gloating, you can't clean yourself up even if you jump into the Yellow River this time. When the Queen heard that she was sleepy, she could almost conclude that Shen Shuwei was really pregnant, and it was most likely not the prince's, which made Neng even more depressed and angry. I heard some bad remarks about Shen Liangdi today, saying that you are pregnant for more than a month. Is this true? Shen Chu shook his head slightly and said, Empress, my concubine is not pregnant. I wonder where did the Empress hear this? The Queen's voice was a bit colder, Shen Liangdi, not only did I hear that you were more than 1 month pregnant, but Feng Zhaoshan also accused you of sleeping with the guards. Can you plead guilty? Feng Zhaoshan reported on me. Shen Shuwei looked at Feng Yuyi curiously. Although she was salty, her memory was not bad. Feng Yuyi was originally a Liangyuan, but was demoted by Xiao Jinyan and moved to Xiaoxiang Pavilion because of her rude remarks. My concubine and Feng Zhaoshan have not seen each other for a long time. I wonder when Feng Zhaoshan saw me hanging out with the guards. Who are the guards? When and where? A month ago, I saw you and a guard kissing me late at night. doing something shameful. It was too dark at the time to see the guard. After Fengyue finished speaking, she looked at the queen again and said sincerely, "Queen, please tell the truth in every word I said." Shen Chu said softly, "Facts are based on evidence. To catch a thief and get the stolen goods, to catch an adulterer is to catch a couple. It's just empty talk. Is it okay for you to hang out with the eunuch?" Fengyue was furious. "You are talking nonsense, how could I hang out with an eunuch? Eunuchs are so disgusting, you don't want to spit on them." The father-in-law and eunuch present listened and looked a little unhappy. Although it is a well-known fact that the father-in-law and eunuchs do not have such things, it is very insulting to their dignity to say it in public. Shen Chu smiled and said, "Then why do I want to hang out with the guards? Is the prince not handsome enough? The figure is not good enough? Or the prince doesn't come once a year?" After speaking, she couldn't help but yawned, her voice soft. Fengyue was stunned for a moment. Although the queen questioned Shen Chuwei's behavior, what she said was reasonable. The prince was the best among the princes in terms of appearance and talent. The prince would go to Xiun Pavilion every 3 days, so Shen Chuwei would not be lonely and unbearable to find the lower-level guards. Unless Shen Chuwei is blind. Feng Zhaoshun, what Shen Liangdi said makes sense. Do you know who that guard is? Fengyue spoke resolutely, "Empress, even if I don't know who the guard is, I can still prove that Shen Liangdi had an affair with the guard. This would be a direct affair without talking about hanging out. Adultery is a major crime in the palace, and beating to death with a stick is a minor offense." The queen asked, "What can I do?" Fengyue said righteously, "As long as the imperial doctor diagnoses Shen Liangdi's pulse, we will know." The queen also had this intention and nodded in agreement. "Doctor, please check Shen Liangdi's pulse." The imperial doctor came out from the side, saluted and said, "Here." The imperial doctor turned to look at Shen Chuwei and said, "Shen Liangdi, please sit down and I will check your pulse." Shen Chuwei sat down on the chair with Chengzi's support and put her hands on the table. The imperial doctor took 2 steps forward and put down the medicine box, took out the diagnosis pad, took out the square handkerchief and put it on Shen Chuwei's wrist, and then began to diagnose the pulse. Fengyue proudly raised her chin and looked at Shen Chuwei, "You are definitely finished this time. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have been demoted and moved to such a remote place without being able to see His Highness for several months. Now it is your turn." The imperial doctor took back his hand after checking the pulse. Without waiting for the imperial doctor's report, the queen asked urgently, "How are you doing, imperial doctor?" "Queen, Shen Liangdi is not pregnant," the imperial doctor said. "It's impossible. The imperial doctor must have made a wrong diagnosis." Fengyue subconsciously thought that the imperial doctor had been bribed by Shen Chuwei. She looked at the queen and said, "Queen, there must be something wrong with this imperial doctor." The queen allows the imperial doctor to be called again to diagnose the pulse. The imperial doctor saluted and said, "I am afraid, but I did not make a mistake in the diagnosis. Shen Liangdi is indeed not pregnant. I saw with my own eyes that Shen Liangdi was having an affair with a guard, and when I heard her say that she was pregnant, you must have made a mistake in the diagnosis." Fengyue insisted that Shen Chuwei was pregnant. The queen pondered for a moment and then ordered, "Then bring the famous imperial doctor over to diagnose Shen Liangdi's pulse." Here Qingying responded, then left and looked for the imperial doctor again. Shen Chuwei yawned, feeling sleepy. At this moment, she wanted to lie down on the table and sleep. Fengyue saw her yawning profusely and sneered, "Shen Liangdi, pregnant people are prone to drowsiness. You are so drowsy that you still claim that you are not pregnant." Shen Chu said wistfully, "It's useless to talk more now. It's better to wait for the imperial doctor to come and re-diagnose the pulse. 1 sentence will be more useful than 10 words I can say." 2 imperial doctors were invited in one after another by Qingying, and she ordered, When you diagnose Shen Liangdi's pulse, you must do so carefully without making any mistakes. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 178. I know. The imperial doctors responded in unison, and then took Shen Liangdi's pulse one after another. It took only a moment for the two to finish taking the pulse. Then the two reported to the queen. Queen, Shen Liangdi is not pregnant. Queen, Shen Liangdi has no pregnancy pulse. The imperial doctor finished reporting while Shen Shuwei yawned. Feng Yuiyu saw it and showed an unbelievable look. This is impossible. Shen Shuwei obviously has a pregnancy pulse. How could it not be diagnosed? After listening to the report of the imperial doctor, the queen secretly breathed a sigh of relief. From the bottom of her heart, she still hoped that Shen Shuwei was innocent. She looked at Feng Yuiyu and asked coldly, Feng Zhaoshan, what else do you have to say? Queen, I did not lie. Shen Liangdi was clearly misbehaving and had an affair with the guards. Feng Yuiyu was unwilling to accept it and still insisted that Shen Shuwei had an affair. The queen's voice deepened a bit, everything requires evidence. If you don't have evidence, you are slandering me. Do you know that? Feng Yuiyu said unwillingly, Queen, please ask the imperial physician to check Shen Liangdi's pulse again. The queen was too lazy to listen to Feng Yuiyu's nonsense and ordered in a cold voice, do you think I am idle and listen to your nonsense? Come, drag Feng Zhaoshan out and slap her 100 times. See if she dares to talk nonsense again in the future. Eunuch Ren stepped forward and directed two eunuchs to drag Feng Yuiyu out. Queen, spare my life. The two young eunuchs took Feng Yuiyu out regardless of her crying. They didn't stop until they dragged her to the door. Eunuch Ren looked down at Feng Yuiyu and said in his shrill voice, Feng Zhaoshan, although we are eunuchs, we are not as precious as your face, but unfortunately, our hands are not for nothing, and we are very strong. After speaking, Eunuch Ren ordered the two young eunuchs beside him, you two, let Feng Zhaoshan know that the strength of our eunuchs' hands is not worse than that of normal people, understand? The two young eunuchs said in unison, Eunuch Ren, I know. The two eunuchs also heard what Feng Yuiyu said in the palace just now. They were naturally uncomfortable because their self-esteem was hurt. Just take this opportunity to take revenge. The two eunuchs looked at each other, one held Feng Yuiyu's head and lifted her chin, forcing her to raise her head. The other eunuch raised his hand and dropped it heavily. The sound of pa-pa-pa was endless. Asterisk. Shen Shuwei was so sleepy, but the queen was sitting there, and she couldn't go to sleep. It was the most painful to have a bed but not be able to sleep. When the queen first arrived, she found that Shen Shuwei seemed to be sick. She said with some concern, Shen Liangdi, are you feeling unwell? Shen Shuwei nodded vigorously, as if she was afraid that the queen didn't know, replying to the queen, I am indeed feeling unwell. Let me go to sleep quickly, I'm so sleepy. The queen didn't understand what Shen Shuwei meant. She turned her head and looked at the three imperial doctors in the room, you three just checked Shen Liangdi's pulse. Can you tell where she is feeling unwell? The imperial doctor said, replying to the queen, Shen Liangdi is in good health. The queen looked at another imperial doctor and gave the same answer, Queen, Shen Liangdi is in good health. On the way here, the queen learned that the prince stayed in Hehuan Palace last night. She said coquettishly, Shen Liangdi is tired, and the prince is also. Don't you know how to restrain yourself? It's okay if you don't know how to restrain yourself, but there is still no news at all. All my efforts are in vain. Shen Shuwei. Where am I tired? This sentence is easy to be misunderstood, okay. Fortunately, the queen did not stay for long, and left after a few words of concern. When Xiao Jinyan heard that the queen came to question this matter, he went to the Hehuan Palace immediately after returning. When he came, Shen Shuwei was sleeping. In normal times, Xiao Jinyan would definitely not wake her up, but now it was unusual. When Xiao Jinyan went forward to call her, she would not wake up no matter how he called, and he could not help but feel anxious. "Little rabbit, go and call the imperial Dr. Wen." Then he asked Chengzi, "What is the queen doing here?" Chengzi roughly recounted the incident, and then said indignantly, "Your Highness doesn't know, Feng Zhaoshun slandered you. If it weren't for the young lady trying to hide the pulse of happiness, otherwise he would be punished now." After listening to Chengzi's retelling, Xiao Jinyan always felt that Feng Zhaoshun was a little suspicious. Imperial Dr. Wen came soon and used silver needles to wake Shen Shuwei up. The first thing Shen Shuwei said when she woke up was, "Dr. Wen, don't use silver needles next time, it hurts too much." She was awakened by the throbbing pain. Dr. Wen said he felt a little wronged. "It wasn't me who wanted to wake you up, it was the prince who insisted on waking you up. If I didn't use silver needles to stimulate Shen Shuwei, you wouldn't wake up." Xiao Jinyan didn't know that Dr. Wen used silver needles to stimulate Shen Shuwei to wake her up. He was just afraid. "If I don't wake you up, what if you?" He didn't dare to think about the rest. Shen Shuwei asked, "Did your Highness find a way?" When Lu Zheyan came yesterday, Shen Shuwei fell asleep, so she didn't know what was going on. Xiao Jinyan said, "Lu Zheyan said that you met with a murderer recently, and someone used witchcraft to curse you behind your back. Your sleepiness and nightmares for no reason are all because of witchcraft." It was the first time Shen Shuwei heard of witchcraft, and she felt it was very strange just by hearing the name. "No wonder I couldn't find the cause after taking my pulse. I think Feng Zhaoshun is very suspicious. I punished her because of you before. It's very likely that she is resentful of you and is taking revenge on you." After Xiao Jinyan finished speaking, he ordered, "Wei Qi, take people to Feng Zhaoshun's residence to search carefully." "I obey your order." Wei Qi took the order and strode away. When there was no one around, Xiao Jinyan stared at Shen Shuwei for a while and found that she had lost a lot of weight in the past few days and her complexion was worse than usual. "Do you hate me in your heart?" Shen Shuwei asked doubtfully, "Why should I hate your Highness? I almost misunderstood you yesterday." Xiao Jinyan still regrets that he doubted her betrayal because he listened to the words of Imperial Dr. Wen. It was also at that time that he cared about Shen Shuwei so much, and the more he cared, the more afraid he was that it was true. Shen Shuwei spoke slowly, "Your Highness is not a saint." When he heard the trusted imperial physician say that it was a happy pulse, he was definitely skeptical. "But your Highness did not immediately punish me without any reason, but gave me a chance to explain and believed me. This is more than 99% of the men in this world. More importantly, your Highness still remembers my life-saving grace." When she heard Xiao Jinyan's last words last night, she was still a little moved. Xiao Jinyan said, "You risked your life to save me, so I naturally remember it. Fortunately, you did not disappoint me." Shen Shuwei also said, "Your Highness did not disappoint me either." Xiao Jinyan did not comment, "Wait until you recover this time, then you can sleep with me. I don't want to wait any longer. Good night, my dears." 3 chapters have been updated today, with 6,000 words. It depends on the situation whether to update 8,000 words today. Being cute and asking for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets to encourage. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 179. Shen Shuwei is quite sensitive to the word serving the emperor in bed. She felt uncomfortable when she heard it. "We were talking about the issue of trust just now, why did it suddenly come to serving the emperor in bed?" She said that saving her life does not require her to repay it with her body, and she just needs to serve her with delicious food and fish. If a time limit can be added, it would be the best for a lifetime. In this way, she can live a carefree life. Xiao Jinyan raised his hand and tapped her forehead. Why don't you speak? Shen Shuwei was a little drowsy, and the tap drove away a few sleepy heads. She blinked her beautiful starry eyes. I am not feeling well now, so I can't serve the emperor in bed. Xiao Jinyan chuckled, I am not such a beast. I want you to serve the emperor in bed with illness. I mean I will serve the emperor in bed after you recover. Shen Shuwei. Prince, can you not say indecent things with a serious face? She sighed secretly. It's still time to serve the emperor in bed, but sooner or later, you just arrived at noon. I'm in a coma all day now, I'm afraid I won't recover that quickly, she said softly. Xiao Jinyan thought she was worried, so he comforted her, don't worry, I'll catch the person who hurt you and make you recover soon. I believe in your ability and strength, and I'm sure you can catch the bad guy soon. Shen Shuwei was blowing rainbow farts on her mouth, and she was very nervous. Sleeping with her meant that she was really Xiao Jinyan's concubine, and the possibility of leaving the palace in the future was very small. In fact, it doesn't matter whether she leaves the palace or not. If she can stay like this, it's good to eat and drink for free. Just when Shen Shuwei was sighing that she was about to become Xiao Jinyan's concubine, a hand came up to her face. The hand was very beautiful, and the knuckles were slender and distinct. Xiao Jinyan looked at the girl's tender face and called softly, Xiaoju. Shen Shuwei raised her head and looked at him in confusion, and saw his handsome face slowly approaching her. She subconsciously stretched out her hand to press against his chest, and could feel the firmness of his chest muscles through the clothes. But this couldn't stop Xiao Jinyan from getting closer. That handsome face was infinitely magnified, and you could clearly see the thick black and long eyelashes, as well as the delicate and flawless cheeks. The cold breath wrapped around her, and it felt slightly cool. The last experience was still fresh in my memory, and the strange feeling made people nervous. Xiao Jinyan couldn't help but kiss her lips, and his movements were a little softer than last time, for fear of scaring her. Because she seemed to be scared last time, this time he was particularly gentle. The faint fragrance of peach blossoms filled the tip of his nose. When he wanted to try deeper, he encountered obstacles. Shen Shuwei closed her mouth nervously, but couldn't resist the sleepiness. She closed her eyes and felt drowsy. Maybe Xiao Jinyan was too gentle, and she really fell asleep. Xiao Jinyan tasted it for a while, and withdrew with an unsatisfied mind. He slowly opened his eyes and found that Shen Shuwei's eyes were closed and her breathing was even. He knew at a glance that she was asleep. In Shen Shuwei's current situation, once she falls asleep, she will sleep very soundly and it will be difficult to wake up. He slowly put her back on the bed, covered her with the quilt, and looked at her sleeping appearance, feeling a little distressed. Thinking that someone deliberately framed her in this state, Xiao Jinyan's eyes darkened. If anyone dared to use witchcraft to harm Shen Shuwei, he would never let him go. Asterisk. Feng Yuiyu was sitting in front of the mirror, crying as she looked at her swollen face. The most important thing for a woman is her face. If it is ruined, there will be nothing. When Wei Qi led people into Xiaoxiang Pavilion, he heard the woman crying. Feng Yuiyu was frightened by the guards who suddenly broke in. What are you doing here? Get out. I am here to search on the order of the prince. Wei Qi has never had the heart to sympathize with women, and he ordered without looking back, search, don't miss any corner. Yes. A group of guards began to conduct a carpet search in the house. There were not many furnishings in Xiaoxiang Pavilion, and most of them were shabby. Feng Yuiyu covered her face and didn't care, because she couldn't care. After searching for a long time, the guards reported that they didn't find anything suspicious. Wei Qi frowned and looked at Feng Yuiyu. Feng Yuiyu lowered her head with a look of fear. Wei Qi stared at Feng Yuiyu for a long time and ordered in a cold voice, catch her. Two slender guards grabbed Feng Yuyu on the left and right and followed Wei Qi back to the prince's bedroom. At this time in the study, Xiao Jinyan sat in front of the desk, lowering his eyes to deal with the official business at hand. Wei Qi strode in and reported, "Master, no suspicious things were found." Xiao Jinyan raised his eyes to look at Wei Qi and asked in a cold voice, "Are you sure you have searched everything?" "My master, I have searched every corner and found no suspicious items," Wei Qi replied respectfully. Xiao Jinyan's eyes flashed with doubt. "Where is Feng Zhaoshan?" Wei Qi said, "Outside." "Xiao Jinyan, bring him in." Yes, after Wei Qi left, he brought Feng Yuyu in. He had no sympathy for women and threw her to the ground. Feng Yuyu, with a scarf on her cheek, fell to the ground in embarrassment. She looked up at Xiao Jinyan, who was sitting in front of the desk. His cold and emotionless eyes made her feel cold all over. She knelt on the ground with her knees together, her body prostrate on the ground, her voice hoarse and weak. "Your Highness, I pay my respects to you. May your Highness be blessed with good health." As soon as she opened her mouth, her facial nerves were pulled, and she cried in pain. Xiao Jinyan looked at Feng Yuyu on the ground coldly, and his voice became even colder. "Feng Zhaoshan, Shen Liangdi is seriously sleepy and has a false pulse. Is it you who is behind this? If you tell the truth and let Shen Liangdi recover as before, I will give her a lighter sentence." Feng Yuyu cried and argued, "Your Highness, I am wronged. I have not done anything that is harmful to the world. Please investigate clearly." Xiao Jinyan asked coldly, "Then why did you go to the queen to expose Shen Liangdi's affair with the guard? If you really saw it, would you not see the guard's face?" "Your Highness, Shen Liangdi's behavior is dissolute and indecent. She is under him, and she has been cuckolding your Highness. Your Highness, don't be deceived by her innocent face." After Feng Yuyu finished speaking, Xiao Jinyan picked up the book on the table and hit the disgusting mouth accurately. "Shut up." Feng Yuyu had just received 100 slaps today. Her cheeks and mouth were swollen, and such a thick book happened to be hit by the corner of the book, and blood flowed out immediately. Feng Yuyu screamed, "Ah!" Xiao Jinyan's voice was cold. "Do you think I am a 3-year-old child who is so easy to lie? I know who she is better than you. If you don't tell the truth, don't blame me for being ruthless." Feng Yuyu covered her mouth, and tears flowed down her face when she opened her mouth. Looking at the man sitting in front of the desk, she said unwillingly, "Your Highness, I am not lying. Shen Liangdi cheated on you. Your Highness, don't be fooled by her." Feng Yuyu endured the pain and said that she wanted to pull Shen Chuwei down, be despised by your Highness, and throw her away, and endure everything she had suffered. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 180. Xiao Jinyan frowned, his eyes were cold. If the curse on Shen Chuwei had not been found, he would have punished Feng Yuyu long ago. He would not let her talk nonsense and slander Shen Chuwei here. "Are you going to say it or not?" "Your Highness, I am devoted to you." "Why do you love such a fickle woman so much? Shen Liangdi is not worthy of you." "She is not worthy of your Highness," Feng Yuyu shouted at the end, unable to speak because of the pain. Her voice was very hoarse. Xiao Jinyan didn't want to listen to her slander anymore, and ordered in a cold voice, "Take her away, and do everything you can to make her tell where the curse on Shen Liangdi is." "I obey your order." Wei Qi bent down, picked up Feng Yuyu and strode out. After Feng Yuyu was dragged away, the study became quiet instantly. Xiao Jinyan frowned, "Call Lord Lu over." Lu 11 responded and went to find Lord Lu. Lu Zayan arrived late and saw Xiao Jinyan sitting in front of the desk with a gloomy face. He was in a bad mood. "Your Highness, I heard that the person who used the witchcraft was caught. Why are you still at a loss?" Xiao Jinyan said, "He was caught, but Feng Zhaoshan refused to admit it and didn't say where the thing was." Shen Liangdi is still in a coma. This is not a good thing. Witchcraft has appeared in the palace to harm people. If the thing is not found and destroyed in time, the consequences will be disastrous. Shen Liangdi's coma time is getting longer and longer, which means she is in danger. Lu Zheyan sighed. Women are the most vicious, that's right, what kind of hatred would make her do such a cruel thing to Shen Liangdi? Xiao Jinyan asked, haven't you found any clues yet? Lu Zheyan was a little helpless. Your Highness, the art of calculation is not omnipotent. Xiao Jinyan raised his eyebrows and looked at Lu Zheyan. Then what's the use of you? Lu Zheyan felt a chill on his back, and he smiled awkwardly. Your Highness, that's not the way to say it. I am sure I can be useful. Xiao Jinyan didn't want to argue with Lu Zheyan. He said, follow me to Xiaoxiang Pavilion. Lu Zheyan bowed. I have the same idea. Xiao Jinyan came to Xiaoxiang Pavilion, which was even more dilapidated than Xiun Pavilion. He walked in slowly, because the things inside had been searched, things were messy, and the tables and chairs were moved. Lu Zheyan followed behind, looking at the deserted Xiaoxiang Pavilion. No wonder it was called Xiaoxiang Pavilion. Xiao Jinyan and the guards searched again, but still found nothing. Feng Zhaoshun is unwilling to say, I'm afraid he wants to kill Shen Liangdi, Lu Zheyan said. Xiao Jinyan angrily slapped the table in front of him, and with a crack, the wooden table broke into pieces. How dare she? Lu Zheyan looked at the table that was still fine just now, and was still scared when it moved on four legs. The trip to Xiaoxiang Pavilion was unsuccessful. I will go back and calculate to see if I can find the exact approximate location, Lu Zheyan said. Xiao Jinyan said, this palace asked you to find the thing that harmed people. Lu Zheyan trembled when he heard it. It was really not easy to be a minister. Asterisk. Shen Chuwei slept for a whole day and night this time. Concubine Su and Tao Chenjui came to visit, but were rejected by the little rabbit. Xiao Jinyan was afraid that she would be hungry, so he asked Imperial Doctor Wen to wake her up. Imperial Physician Wen hesitated. Your Highness, Shen Liangdi told me last time that she didn't want to be awakened by the pain of the silver needles. Xiao Jinyan frowned and said, she has been sleeping for a day and a night. What if she is hungry? Your Highness obeys your command. Imperial Physician Wen took out the silver needles and stimulated Shen Liangdi with ease. Shen Chuwei only felt a throbbing pain in his heart, and his brows were knotted. Xiao Jinyan saw that he was in so much pain, and turned his head to ask, how did you do it? Why is she in so much pain? Imperial Physician Wen said in embarrassment, Your Highness, I am just doing what you said. Xiao Jinyan said angrily, I asked you to wake her up, not hurt her. Imperial Physician Wen had cold sweat on his forehead, and he had a lot of pain in his heart. Shen Chuwei frowned, slowly opened his eyes, and saw Xiao Jinyan standing in front of the bed. Seeing her wake up, Xiao Jinyan secretly breathed a sigh of relief. You finally woke up. Shen Chuwei's eyes slowly moved to Wen Imperial Physician, and said word by word, you used the silver needle to prick me again. The voice was very aggrieved. When Imperial Physician looked down at the silver needle in his hand, and then looked at Shen Chuwei's eyes full of grievance. It was really not his fault, it was all ordered by His Highness. Xiao Jinyan ordered, prepare dinner. Chengzi had been waiting at the door, and immediately went to prepare dinner after hearing the order. Shen Chuwei finished washing and sat at the dining table. She was listless, and her eyes lit up instantly when she saw the table full of delicious food. Xiao Jinyan picked up some of her favorite braised pork and put it in her bowl. She looked so thin these 2 days that even the baby fat on her cheeks was gone. Shen Chuwei looked at the braised pork in the bowl, her mouth curved, picked it up and put it to her mouth, and ate it in one bite. The fat and lean were evenly distributed, not greasy, and tasted good. Chengzi's cooking skills are getting better and better. Xiao Jinyan said, eat more, you look thinner. Great minds think alike. Shen Shuwei curved her eyebrows and picked up another piece and put it into her mouth to eat. Xiao Jinyan thought of Feng Yui's incident. I have already arrested Feng Zhaoshun, but she has never admitted what she did, and the curse has not been found. Shen Shuwei puffed her cheeks and threw Chengzi's instructions behind her. Then I will go to Xiaoxiang Pavilion tomorrow to see if I can find it. Xiao Jinyan said, you are still sick, don't run around. Let Lu Zheyan go to the palace tomorrow to see you. Shen Shuwei did not refuse, and lowered her head to continue eating the braised pork in the bowl. Xiao Jinyan looked up at her eating, as if she was eating something delicious, eating with relish, not at all delicate and artificial. Eat slowly, don't choke. Shen Shuwei said while eating, it's okay, Your Highness, if you digest slowly, you don't have to wake up tomorrow. Xiao Jinyan looked at Shen Shuwei's optimistic attitude and felt relieved. Watching her eat the third bowl of rice, this amount of rice. I heard that pregnant people have a better appetite and eat more. How many bowls of rice will you have to eat? Shen Shuwei paused chewing and looked up at Xiao Jinyan opposite. Why did he suddenly ask about this topic? She swallowed the rice in her mouth and said softly, isn't it early for me? Xiao Jinyan said leisurely, it will be soon before I go to bed with you. Shen Shuwei blushed and muttered, Your Highness, it's meal time now. Do you think this is appropriate? Xiao Jinyan said indifferently, why not? Shen Shuwei put her chopsticks into the plate, picked up the largest piece of braised pork and put it in the bowl in front of him, and urged, eat meat. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at the braised pork in the bowl. He didn't eat fat meat, but he picked it up and brought it to his lips to take a bite, chewing it slowly. You eat 4 bowls of rice now. I guess you will probably eat more than 6 bowls of rice by then.